With the new patch, Ember Rise, launching in September, is 2019 a good time to get into Rainbow Six Siege? Rainbow Six Siege is a first-person shooter like no other. This analysis explains what makes it so unique in a format that should interest both veterans and novices who are either new to the game or haven't started playing yet. Is Rainbow Six Siege worth your time? Here's what you should know. Siege has attracted more than 45 million players who've sunk over $1.12 billion into this game. What has drawn so many people to the game? Is it the presentation? Is Rainbow Six Siege a feast for the senses? There are two parts to presentation: audio and visuals. Let's start with Siege's sound design. Audio plays an incredibly important role in playing Siege and can make the difference between winning and losing a round. For instance, you can make an educated guess about where the enemy is coming from by listening to their footsteps. This will help you decide how to prepare for an imminent attack. Position yourself behind cover and reload if necessary. Each explosive and weapon makes a distinctive noise, which experienced players use to identify the source and distinguish friend from foe. If you're too close to the blast, the explosion will impair your hearing for a while, almost like the shockwave blew your eardrums out. This effect is reminiscent of sound design in Bad Company 2. Thankfully, Siege's guns don't induce tinnitus this way, though most of them do sound powerful enough to match their lethality in combat. Are the visuals as satisfactory? Is Siege a graphical powerhouse? Admittedly, the game can look very pretty at times, particularly on some of the newer maps. The lighting and level of detail on the textures is incredible, both on the environment and character models. The tessellation adds a nice touch to the terrain, though this can have an impact on performance of other effects. And speaking of performance, the game stays around 80 frames a second at 1440p with a 1080 Ti and a stock clock Sandy Bridge i7. This is at the highest available settings, bar the anti-aliasing, which has super sampling disabled to match the selected resolution. That's impressive performance for environments that are so detailed, though obviously Ubisoft has made some compromises, particularly with particle effects. While not all particle effects look awful, they can be inconsistent in their quality. For instance, explosions look powerful enough for their brief flash of light and smoke, but there is a reason that flash is brief. The smoke and fire in the game is underwhelming at best. The smoke used to look more realistic with plumes billowing from the canister, but these weren't completely opaque. You could see and therefore shoot at players hiding in the clouds, which fails the fundamental purpose of smoke grenades. Ubisoft solved this problem by replacing the smoke with an amorphous grey sphere, which admittedly does a much better job of hiding whatever or whoever is hiding inside its area of effect, but doesn't look quite as authentic as the effect it supplanted. The fire, on the other hand, is the most pitiful effect seen in any recent title, and fails to reflect the degree of damage you will suffer if you enter its area of effect. Maybe Ubisoft will get around to revamping Siege's particle effects like they did with its maps like Canal and Hereford Base. Why did they feel the need to remaster these maps? Quite a few of the older maps have aged poorly, with the lighting and textures looking noticeably duller and less detailed than most of the newer editions. The launch maps didn't always look this bland though. The house maps shown in the game's first trailers look considerably darker and more believable than what the game ended up with at launch. This unfortunate degradation marks Rainbow Six Siege as one of the many games that Ubisoft has downgraded. To be fair, Ubisoft did make up for this by overhauling the quality of environmental textures across all maps. This didn't cut it for maps like Hereford Base, which Ubisoft had to rework, or to be more accurate, replace. The old Hereford Base was swapped out for an entirely new map that looked nothing like the one it supplanted, which was a good thing. The lighting and textures in the new Hereford Base is fantastic, and surpasses even the pre-downgrade build shown before release. This update, which Ubisoft called Operation Grim Sky, replaced Siege's ugliest map with one of its most impressive environments yet. This wasn't just a facelift. The new Hereford Base plays differently from its predecessor, forcing players to navigate changes in map layout. That said, most maps share commonalities in design rooted in the fundamental principle Siege was built on: asymmetry, which is more nuanced than the absolute symmetry in games like Dead by Daylight. Most of Siege's maps feature a structure in the center. One team spawns inside the building, the other outside. The team that spawns inside, the defenders, risk detection if they stay outside the building for more than a couple of seconds. Defenders used to have 5 seconds before they were detected, but Ubisoft decided to reduce this to 2 seconds. Why? To stop defenders from killing the attackers before they even step foot inside the building. This is commonly called spawn killing and is extremely frustrating for players on the receiving end, because there is no respawning in Siege. This is the second fundamental principle of Siege: permadeath. Once you die, you stay dead for the rest of the round. The stakes are as high as they can get in video games. Any damage you sustain is permanent, since there is only one character that can heal you, and even then, he only gets 3 chances. This makes Siege incredibly intense, even in casual matches. One wrong move, and you'll be stuck spectating your teammates for the rest of the round. You aren't totally useless at this stage. You can still warn your teammates if you spot anything suspicious. This is a double-edged sword though. Impatient spectators can nag you into walking into death traps just to end the round more quickly. This is by no means unique to Siege, since there are plenty of other games that eschew respawns. Counter-Strike is just one example that comes to mind. What makes this mechanic so compelling? Permadeath makes winning gunfights all the more satisfying. Kill one? You don't have to worry about him for the rest of the round, which takes some weight off your shoulders. The enemy team is also deprived a fifth of their firepower. If you spawn kill an attacker, they might not even get a chance to use that firepower. And this is why Ubisoft tried to nerf spawn killing, and we aren't just referring to outdoor detection. In 2017, Ubisoft removed the ACOG telescopic sight from the German defenders. The reason given was Ubisoft's new philosophy of restricting ACOGs to the slowest defender characters. Some may have been surprised by this change, since ACOGs are useful for a lot more than spawn peeking. They are indispensable in holding tight angles. That guideline lasted all of 2 years and appears to have been scrapped with the new update, Ember Rise. The new Mexican defender is not among the slowest characters in the game, and he can equip an ACOG on his slug-firing shotgun. This brings us to the third principle of game design that defines Siege. Characters, or as Siege calls them, operators. Characters in Siege can be distinguished by their nationality and law enforcement divisions. The American FBI and British SAS have 4 characters each, 2 attackers and 2 defenders. This information is used only for identification and has no impact on gameplay. Another criterion used to classify characters is speed, which is inversely proportional to their armor. Characters can either be 1 speed, which is the slower end of Siege's spectrum, which is offset by their heavy armor, which reduces incoming damage by 20%. Conversely, many characters are 3 speed, the fastest in the game, owing to their lack of armor. The last class of character, 2 speed and 2 armor, takes 90% damage and represents a middle ground between these 2 extremes. Characters designated as attackers cannot be used if you're on the defending team, and vice versa. This is because each character's unique gadget is designed to help push the objective, which prevents use by both sides at once since attackers and defenders have different, mutually opposed objectives. The 2 sides do share one path to victory: killing all 5 players on the opposite team. This applies across all 3 player versus player game modes: hostage, bomb, and secure area. Defenders hold a hostage. The attackers try to extract the hostage. In secure area, defenders spawn in an objective room which they must defend at all costs. The attackers must invade and push them out of said room. This is what the game's name refers to: attackers laying siege to the defender's spawn point. However, the attackers don't get to storm the defense right away. There is a build-up to the siege, the preparation phase. Attackers must spend the first 45 seconds of each round scouting the map to locate the defenders. Defenders can use these 45 seconds to fortify their position by creating barriers with their gadgets, barricading doors and reinforcing walls to make them harder to destroy. This is the 4th core mechanic of Siege: destruction. Again, destruction isn't unique to Siege by any means. Battlefield is known for its destruction, having peaked with Bad Company 2's comprehensively destructible environments. DICE did move away from this mechanic for Battlefield 3, though they brought destruction back to Battlefield 4 in specific scripted events. Siege's unique implementation of destruction feels like a middle ground between these battlefields. Destruction in Siege is more common than the events in Battlefield 4, but Ubisoft has carefully controlled what you can destroy. Each surface in Siege can be classified by its level of destructibility. Many surfaces are static and indestructible. Some of these floors and ceilings have hatches that are designated for destruction by shotgun fire or explosives. This is another downgrade from the pre-release build, where the floor could be broken through at any spot and wasn't just restricted to one predictable hatch. This destruction still exists in the form of soft walls, but not on floors or ceilings. Soft walls can be punched through with shotguns, or explosives like breaching charges and grenades, and can even be torn down by gunfire of a sufficiently large or powerful caliber. Each defender gets 2 reinforcements that can fortify sections of these valuable walls to make them impervious to gunfire and explosives. That said, reinforced walls can still be breached with incendiary devices like thermite and blowtorches. However, these gadgets take significantly longer to cut through reinforced walls than the explosives do to destroy soft walls. While reinforcement doesn't offer defenders complete protection, it does restrict attackers to more conspicuous and cumbersome tools. This buys the defenders some time, which can make all the difference. Speaking of time, if the attackers occupy the area exclusively for 10 consecutive seconds, they win. If the defenders enter the area while the attackers try to take over, the area is contested and the countdown pauses. This is the most symmetrical of the 3 game modes. The last game mode is Bomb, where defenders must prevent the attackers from planting a diffuser in either of the 2 designated rooms. This forces the defenders to spread themselves thin in the process of protecting both rooms. If the attackers succeed in planting the diffuser, a countdown to victory is started during which the attackers must prevent the defenders from disabling the diffuser. Both planting and disabling the diffuser lock the player into an animation during which they are immobile and therefore vulnerable to gunfire. This mode feels very similar to Counter-Strike, except Siege has predefined characters. Siege's operators are defined by their abilities, which are either skills that have a cooldown like the Brazilian defender's Silent Step, or consumable gadgets like EMP grenades or a consumable ability with a cooldown like Lion's Wall Hack. To the enemy team, these unique gadgets can be a lethal obstacle, like the Canadian defender's Bear Traps, or a disruptive nuisance, either by deterring them, slowing them, or confusing them, or observational tools that provide valuable information about the enemy's position, like Maestro and Valkyrie's cameras. While teamwork is essential for success in Rainbow Six Siege, some characters rely on coordination more than others. Certain characters let you strike out on your own, without relying on the competence of your teammates and still contribute greatly to your team's victory. The French defender, Rook, is a perfect example of the first character I'd recommend to novices. It's quite hard to fail with this operator. Press the gadget key, middle mouse button on the PC, to drop your armor bag and press the use key to pick up your armor plate. You have fulfilled your duty to the team. You're now free to play as you please. You can sit tight and camp near the objective, or go where you like. Doesn't matter either way. See enemy? Point and click. They killed you first? Doesn't matter. You've fulfilled your purpose. Your death doesn't drag your team down because Rook is expendable if his gadget has been deployed. Ubisoft chose characters over the creator class customization for a number of reasons. Firstly, characters allow the developers to restrict players' choice over what gadgets can be paired with what guns. Each operator can choose between 2 primary guns and 2 sidearms. Some characters are lucky enough to choose between 3 primary weapons. There is only one character that allows players some choice in combining weapons and gadgets: the Recruit. To compensate for this freedom, recruits cannot use and equip any attachments, such as optics, on their guns. Recruits are also denied the option of using gadgets unique to other operators. This emboldens developers to give certain characters incredibly powerful abilities while balancing them with weak firepower. I prefer firepower and consequently enjoy playing on the attacking team. Why? Attacker guns kill faster, significantly faster, and this is another consequence of Siege's asymmetry. Most attackers have access to assault rifles, while most defenders are restricted to submachine guns. Assault rifles and submachine guns share similar rates of fire, but assault rifles do significantly more damage both at close range and over long distances. For example, let's look at 2 guns with near identical rates of fire, one an assault rifle and the other a submachine gun, or, to be more precise, a personal defense weapon. The attacker F2 rifle fires 980 rounds a minute, and each round inflicts 37 damage before reduction by armor. The defender P90 fires 970 rounds a minute, and only deals a measly 22 damage. The F2 takes 122 milliseconds to kill the fastest operators, while the P90 takes 247 milliseconds. The defender's submachine gun takes twice as long as a comparable assault rifle to kill the same class of character. This disparity is very noticeable in combat, As a defender, you'll often lose gunfights to attackers even if you got the drop on your targets. It does feel unfair, though the next round does give you the opportunity to take revenge, since the two teams switch sides after the end of each round. Now you get to use a stronger gun. Now you can come out on top, even if the enemy shot you first. It can be hard to understand Ubisoft's logic behind perpetuating this inequality in firepower between attackers and defenders. There are only two defenders whose weapons can go toe-to-toe with attackers' assault rifles. And that's because one of them, the German Jaeger, uses an assault rifle of his own. The other, an Italian man, Maestro, the only defender to get a machine gun. Not only do these weapons kill much faster than any of the defender guns, they get more shots at shooting their target, literally. Jaeger's carbine and Maestro's machine gun get a total of 240 bullets, and so do most of the attackers' assault rifles. Most defenders are restricted to submachine guns, which only get 150 rounds in reserve. As most submachine guns have a 30-round magazine, the total ammunition they begin with is 180 bullets. Submachine guns take more shots to kill, and yet they are given fewer rounds. Shouldn't it be the other way around? To understand how severely this exasperates the already noticeable disparity in firepower between the two sides, let's compare the number of shots Spanish attacker and defender weapons take to kill the enemy team, if it consisted of the most heavily armoured characters available. The Spanish defender's Vector SMG takes 7 shots to kill 3 armour targets and 6 shots to kill 2 armour targets. There are only 3 heavy attackers in the game at this time, though you have a plethora of 2 armour attackers to pick from. The Vector takes 21 shots to kill all 3 heavy attackers in the game, an additional 12 shots to kill the 2 remaining medium armour attackers. That totals 33 shots to kill the heaviest team composition for the attacking side. The Vector has a magazine capacity of 26 and starts with a reserve of 150 bullets. What does this mean? The Spanish defender gets 5 chances to kill the enemy team before her submachine gun runs out of ammunition. The Spanish attacker Jackal's rifle starts with a total of 240 rounds and takes 4 shots to kill 3 armoured defenders, even if they have equipped Rook's armour plate. That totals to 20 shots to kill all 5 heavily armoured defenders. The Spanish attacker gets 12 chances to kill the enemy team before his assault rifle runs out of ammunition. If you thought that was silly, the Brazilian attacker's machine gun has a total of 400 rounds, even though it only takes 4 shots to kill the most heavily armoured targets in the game. This gives the Brazilian attacker at least 20 chances to wipe the enemy team out before his machine gun runs dry. This is far from the only example of Ubisoft's questionable balancing. Let's look at the MP5, the weapon that launched with the 2 French defenders at the game's 2015 release. For the longest time, the MP5 did 30 damage at 800 rounds per minute. At 4 shots to kill light and medium armour, this was never the strongest submachine gun, let alone the most powerful gun on defence. The Chinese T5 and German MP7 did equal or greater damage at a significantly faster fire rate of 900 rounds a minute. Same as the Italian man's machine gun, which kills the fastest characters in 3 shots. To top it off, this LMG shares its ACOG sight with the MP5, which is the latter's saving grace. Clearly, Ubisoft knew the MP5 was by no means the top of the pack, as they introduced an integrally suppressed variant with the Japanese defender. The MP5 SD did the same 30 damage up close, the range at which most gunfights in Siege take place. This is odd since the MP5 does less damage with the suppressor attached, but whatever. Ubisoft inexplicably thought the unsuppressed MP5 was overpowered and nerfed its damage to 27. This has created a bizarre situation where the integrally suppressed MP5 SD does more damage than the unsilenced MP5. How does that make sense? For another example, let's wind the clock back to 2017. Ubisoft went too far and made the Russian sniper overpowered by giving him a thermal scope that could peer through smoke. At that time, this sniper could pick 3 smoke grenades as his secondary gadgets, which coupled with his semi-automatic rifle that could, at the time, kill most defenders in a single shot, made him a one-man killing machine. The most obvious nerf would have been to remove his smoke grenades and force him to rely on his team. That's not what Ubisoft did. Instead, they let him keep his smoke grenades. It was the FBI attackers that had their smoke grenades removed. They received flashbangs in return, which sparked many complaints about the faster FBI attacker becoming overpowered. The Spanish attacker suffered the opposite, having his flashbangs swapped out for smoke grenades. The Spanish attacker specializes in tracking footprints to locate the defender that left the trail. Flashbangs were essential in disorientating the target once he closed in for the kill. If Ubisoft thought the Spaniards' weapon and gadget combination was overpowered, they sure didn't say anything to that effect. Instead, this is the goal they said they had in mind. Make smoke grenades' availability a tougher choice by swapping them with other operators' loadouts. How is availability affected when the number of operators that can equip them hasn't changed? Why did Ubisoft remove the Spaniards' flashbangs if the character they wanted to nerf was the Russian sniper? Well, at least the Spaniard still has his beast of an assault rifle and plenty of ammunition to boot. As a rule, Ubisoft tends to give attackers far more ammunition than defenders. Assault rifles tend to be given a reserve of 210 rounds, but that's not always the case. The Brazilian and Canadian attackers' assault rifles launched with a reserve of just 150 rounds, though subsequent patches increased this to the standard 210. However, Ubisoft made the same mistake again with Maverick, whose very average M4 carbine only gets 150 rounds in reserve, an oversight the developers have yet to fix. Siege veterans will rightly point out, this doesn't matter if you go for headshots. With very few exceptions, you will kill your target instantly if you shoot them in the head. Hooray for realism! This brings us to the fifth factor in Siege's success: Ubisoft's selective implementation of realism. You could say Siege was never all that authentic. Defenders have always had the ability to conjure out of thin air gigantic metal reinforcements that latch onto walls in addition to an unlimited supply of flimsy barricades to block doors and windows. On the other hand, Siege's characters have varied from grounded realism like electrifying batteries, grenade launchers and sledgehammers to outright science fiction like temporary wall hacks or invisible mines and drones. While this may hurt some players' perception of the game's authenticity, some characters have undoubtedly benefited from Ubisoft ditching realism for fun. For an example, let's look at the Italian woman, Alibi. She can throw down 3 balls which, if given enough space, unwrap and project a decoy hologram of her aiming down her submachine gun. If this wasn't implausible enough, any enemy that shoots this hologram has their location revealed to the entire defending team for a couple of seconds. The decoy is not destroyed unless the base that projects it is. The mechanic provides a setup for innovative and enjoyable strategies. For instance, if you spawn in a room that has 2 doors, you could drop 2 decoys at aim at each entrance. Then, you could stand between them, in effect pretending to be the last decoy. This way you'll always be the second alibi they see. If the enemy has been playing Siege or indeed any other first-person shooter, they'll likely train their twitch reflexes to shoot as soon as they spot a target. This will work against them when their instinct leads them to shoot the decoy, which temporarily exposes their location to the entire defending team. At this point, their first impulse will be to take cover, which allows Alibi to stand over the decoy that was shot, effectively taking its place while the enemy is looking elsewhere. When the enemy takes another peek, they're unlikely to shoot again since they're under the impression you're just a decoy. This gives you the split second you need to take them down with a headshot. Now, your victim is likely to tell his team that the alibi is not a decoy. You're free to prove them wrong by stepping off the base to reactivate the hologram. Goaded by your victim's misfortune, more enemies will shoot the decoy they've been told is a real character. This creates a continuous cycle of confusion for the attackers and endless entertainment for the mastermind. This is a good example of the strategy Siege has used to draw 45 million players. How has Ubisoft extracted $1.1 billion from them, though? The character model of customization serves another purpose: monetization. New characters aren't immediately available to all players upon their release. Ubisoft reserves instant access to new characters as a privilege players must pay for by purchasing the Season Pass, which immediately unlocks the 8 operators released in its year. In reality, the pass grants early access, not exclusive access. Players who don't buy the passes can play these characters eventually. After the first week of their launch, you get the chance to spend 25,000 renown, the game's grind currency, to unlock 1 DLC character. Ubisoft estimates this takes 30 hours. So you save 240 hours by buying the year pass. Another way of looking at it is Ubisoft wastes 240 hours of your time hoping the grind will drive you to purchase their pass. That said, the pass does offer other perks. You also get 600 credits, which you can use to buy an operator from another year, which will save you an additional 30 hours, bringing the total time saved to 270 hours. That's 270 hours you save for $30, which comes out to 9 hours saved per dollar spent. The pass also increases the amount of renown you earn by 5% and gives you a discount of 10% at the store, at least until the year expires. But still, How much time do you save there? Let's take the example of a DLC operator from another year. Without the Season Pass, you take 30 hours to unlock the 25,000 renown, for a rate of 833 renown per hour. With a 10% discount, you only have to accumulate 22,500 renown. With your 5% renown boost, you'll be earning 875 renown per hour. At this rate, you'll unlock the discounted operator at 25.7 hours, which is 85.7% of the time it would have taken you without the Season Pass. The boost and discount also accelerate acquisition of cosmetics, though the exorbitant prices feel like a waste of grind currency that could otherwise have been better spent on unlocking new characters. Many players find they have no renown to spend on cosmetics after they've unlocked the character they want. I've played the game since 2016 and I still haven't managed to unlock all characters in the game, let alone waste any renown on cosmetics. The grind does get onerous after a while. So Ubisoft provides a couple of avenues to supplement your renown income. Challenges. Weekly challenges reward 250 renown for winning 4 rounds as a character from a DLC faction, or 8 rounds as a character from a launch faction. You also get 250 renown for killing 7 enemies with a designated weapon class or gadget. Daily challenges reward 150 renown for completing tasks like killing 2 enemies or landing 1 headshot in multiplayer, as well as completing 3 rounds as an attacker, defender, or as a character from a designated faction. These are easier to complete as you don't need to win the round, just stick around to its conclusion. The easiest one by far is the daily challenge that rewards 150 renown for playing 1 round of Terrorist Hunt as a character from a designated faction. Terrorist Hunt is Siege's player versus environment mode, which pits you against AI-controlled recruits. You can either play solo or queue for co-op. Stick to solo if you're completing the challenge, as you can kill your character immediately upon spawn and still get the 150 renown. This might make it seem like Ubisoft doesn't care about players exploiting loopholes in renown gain, but that's not always the case. In July 2017, Ubisoft caused quite a stir when a popular streamer was erroneously caught up in their ban wave. This false ban was soon lifted after the streamer talked to his contact, a Ubisoft community developer. This publicity of the incident forced Ubisoft to reveal the basis for the ban wave, and the real reason was no less ridiculous. This evening, all players that were banned were part of 2 lists. One list contained players that were taking advantage of a method that can be used to hack the rate at which renown is gained in situations, up to the 50,000 renown daily limit. The first group makes up the majority of the players banned this evening. That's right, Ubisoft banned players who had bought their game for skipping the grind without paying them again for the privilege. It's funny how they try to justify this. Both of these methods of renown acquisition violate the following section of the Code of Conduct. Any attempt to edit, corrupt, or change game or server code is strictly prohibited. It's ridiculous how Ubisoft tried to smear these players as malicious cheaters who injected hacks to give themselves an unfair advantage over other players in competitive matches, when all they really did was create a shortcut to the grind using situations, the game's single-player missions. This had no impact on other players' experience whatsoever. But Ubisoft still went nuclear in order to deter detours their buyers could use to bypass the grind and consequently circumvent their revenue streams. You don't get $1.1 billion without squeezing every penny you can from your customers. To be fair, this does pay for the development of new maps which are instantly available to all players, even if they haven't purchased a year pass. There is a pragmatic purpose to this generosity. Keeping all buyers on the same pool of maps prevents the player base from fracturing between those who have paid for new maps and those who haven't. Furthermore, new maps give everyone something to look forward to, no matter if they've purchased the pass. Even if their interest has lapsed, regular updates give all 45 million players a reason to return to Siege, and maybe even recommend the game to friends they'd like to play with. And that concludes our analysis of the game design behind Siege's success. There is more content like this on the way, so please like, subscribe, and press the bell button so you don't miss out. If you found this video interesting, please share it, because YouTube won't. Several subscribers have reported that YouTube are screwing with their notifications, even when the bell button is enabled. So if that's true, just keep an eye out for our thumbnails.